War on drugs. Okay, we good on YouTube.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. That's good. How about war drugs talk? 50-year anniversary of the war on drugs. As it still ensues, as they try to create another name or another avenue or another something to call it. I'm glad we have identified the war on drugs as a negative thing. My whole life it hasn't been identified as a negative thing. In fact, it was championed as a positive thing my entire life. The war on drugs was championed a positive thing, and the people who were on the I guess the brunt of the war on drugs, the people who were getting the brunt of the stick or the bad side of the coin, so to speak, was black and brown folks. And America as a whole was adamantly against, you know, black and brown folks. Even other black and brown folks wanted to disconnect themselves from other black and brown folks because the perception was if we split ourselves up from these black and brown folks who were criminals, who were inherently criminals, says the data. The data says we were inherently criminal. Biden and all these other politicians decided to take a hard stance. They were heavy supporters on tough on crime bills and attacking the black community. But I want people to know before the war on drugs, it was something else. The war on drugs was just a cute name to call something to cover up white folks' hate.
A sophisticated campaign.
Yeah, white supremacy. Before the war on drugs, white supremacy was here, and we had to deal with white supremacy prior to. But white people wanted to couch their white hate and their white aggression in a nice cutesy name and package. And of course, it's not us. We're not the criminals. It's these savage black folks who we had in cages for all of these years. These guys are the criminals. These guys are savages. And we need to have a war on drugs because these black people are bringing in the drugs. Meanwhile, black folks ain't never left America. We didn't have no planes. We didn't have no boats. White folks, we've come to find out the Nixon administration was the ones bringing in the drugs. The American government was bringing in the drugs. This is factual information. You guys check this out. The American government were bringing in hard drugs and forcing them onto these impoverished communities, forcing them onto these poor communities. And these poor communities were actually straight wealth generators. Poor people make money and they have to spend it right away. You know, they have to spend it for their survival. Poor people pay more for a cost of living than rich and wealthy folks. People don't know that. But prior to the war on drugs, it was just white hate. We just gonna kill us some niggers today. We killing niggers, you know, and that's just what it was. The war on drugs is just another word to couch it in. That's why, you know, when we trivialize the war on drugs to just arrest, white folks was like, well, I was arrested too for cannabis. I experienced the war on drugs. Shit, if all the war on drugs was just arrest, I experienced the war on drugs too. No, white folks, you experienced the rest. You know, casualty. You're a casualty of war in this system of white supremacy. You know, you're not getting to live the quote unquote white American dream like you see your rich white counterparts. But that's what it is. You know, it was a war against black folks. Didn't have anything to do with you. You guys just got caught up in the sweep. You know, so now as they talk about ending this war, which they haven't, and I just recently saw somebody celebrating that they aren't arresting any more teenagers, any more children, which is a lie. That's a lie. And we don't need that type of rhetoric. We don't need that type of rhetoric around. If they're going to end the war on drugs, let's end it. If they're going to stop arresting children, let's stop arresting children. But don't tell us that you're not going to arrest children anymore and you're still arresting children for cannabis use, which is a Schedule 1 drug. They said they're not going to arrest children for possession anymore. So what happens when you see that black child with weed? Now,
no longer possession charge.
It's intent to sell. It's intent to sell. Like I tell people, I was 14 years old. I was charged with sale to a minor. Now get that. A 14-year-old is what? A minor, right? At 14, I was charged with sale to a minor, and I never sold him any weed. I never sold the minor, my peer, any weed. Never sold them any weed. But I was charged with sale of a Schedule I drug to a minor. You understand me? So when you got white men or white folks and a white judge and a white judicial system all over black folks, it's the same shit, you know. And black folks, even if they get rid of this war, it's because they found out another way to arrest us. They found out another way to kill us. They found out another way to, you know, persecute us in some shape, form, or fashion. You know, so let's not get all hyped up behind them ending this war on drugs, which they haven't. The numbers don't say that. The numbers don't say you ended the war on drugs. Not when ACLU report doesn't say that you ended the war on drugs.
It's still a Schedule I drug, and every single state that has legalized, despite the fact that they have decriminalized possession, there is still criminal laws tied to distribution, criminal laws tied to manufacturing, etc. And now they will have criminal laws tied to the fact that you aren't licensed and operating. And we saw what happened in New York with Eric Garner and cigarettes, which were legal, but he didn't have the state licensing fee. And we saw what happened there. So I think
you have to decriminalize. You have to decriminalize being black and brown. You understand me? You have to decriminalize being black and brown. The inhumane treatment that we get from these public servants way before an arrest even takes place. The inhumane treatment that we have to deal with in America because they don't regard us as human beings that deserve the same protection from our public servants. Public servants don't view us as citizens that they are supposed to protect. They view us as a population that they are supposed to protect America from. You know what I'm saying? Black people are considered a population that is supposed to be kept at bay from America. Mm. So, you know, when you decriminalize being black, because like my wife just said, Eric Garner, I've been pulled over. My car has been tossed way before any marijuana was discovered or found. The dog walked the car, didn't hit the car. Hit means the dog smelled marijuana or smelled some drugs. The dog didn't hit the car. The dog didn't signal the handler. Yet and still, my car was tossed on the side of the road, and I was eventually arrested when they found some marijuana concentrates, which are odorless, in a sealed container. So you're talking about what about the treatment? See, the war on drugs was a treatment, an uncivil, inhumane treatment to a people, not just arrest. The war on drugs was bigger than just arrest. You understand me? You're talking about the school system, the American public school systems was in on it. All the TV shows and syndicates were in on it. You know, you had to convince the public at large annually, generation after generation, that these black and brown people deserve to be mistreated in this way. Killed, beaten, harassed. They deserve to live in a police state where police occupy our neighborhoods for a problem that the government created. So here it is, the 50-year anniversary of the war on drugs. I guess they're talking about the 50-year anniversary because they're trying to tell the public that the war is over. And the arrests don't say that the war is over. The inhumane treatment of black folks still ensues. Police are allowed to do whatever they want to do with us. So what are you talking about? The war is over.
And the victims of the war, there are plenty that are still behind bars just for possession, still behind bars, doing life sentences, still dealing with all of the consequences that come with falling prey to the system.
I mean, I think that's where I get so much fuel and energy and strength from, because I was a part of that. And two, it's not over. It's not over. And it's so ugly. I don't know. You know, I've been through a lot of hood situations. I've been through crazy situations. But I mean, this equity shit, I don't think I've seen anything like it. This is something crazy because you got it. This cannabis shit. They brought the whole hood to this cannabis thing, and the thugs of this whole thing is these white men, and the underlings is these black groups. You got these black groups serving these white folks who run the industry. Period. I've been attacked more by black folks and black groups for trying to speak positively, for trying to speak up adamantly to try to give us a voice. I've been attacked more by black groups for trying to defend black folks in this matter because we have no seat at the table. I've been attacked more by black groups and black people owned by white folks, black people who are paid by white folks to attack black folks, or black folks who just are black people who just envious because they want to be the leaders, but they don't have the balls to stand up to white folks and actually know what this issue is about. You know, they're talking about a 50-year war, just that alone.
50 years of an injustice.
50-year trillion-dollar war, and you want to give a 50-year-old an expungement? You want to give a 40-year-old an expungement? I'm 40. 50-year and black groups is championing these expungements. And if black folks speak against it, like I did, because I got a brain and I went through this, you see, and that's the other misconception. Everybody black and brown went through the war on drugs. Everybody. It don't matter if you've been arrested. It don't matter if you've been arrested, but you got these black folks who say, no, I didn't experience the war on drugs. You got these college black folks, the most intelligent black folks that we have in our society. That's what I was always taught. I was always taught that I was a nigger and you guys was the smart ones. I was always taught that. You a nigger because you ain't go to college and you a thug and you a criminal and you out here operating in criminality. You a nigger, I'm a nigger, and y'all the smart ones, right? Y'all the smart ones, right? But what you got for us? After this 50-year, you telling me an expungement, and then they say, well, it's a start. We got to get something. You see how broke, busted, and disgusted these folks is? We got to get something. Oh, lowly ass motherfucking folks leading the black community. No spine. We got to get something. No, I don't want that. How about that? How about that? How about that? What you trying to offer me through these expungements don't fit the crime. How about that? Instead, we got some broke spine black folks. That'll do. That's okay. That's a good start. It didn't happen overnight. Rome wasn't built overnight. Black folks saying all these damn cliches. You're right. You know what? It wasn't built overnight. So what we gonna do starting today, day one, and y'all say expungements for a 50-year war where children, they didn't start till we was adults. They didn't wait till we was men.
Children, and like you said, criminalized you to the point that you had to go 30, 40, some people 50 years of their life figuring out how to navigate this society, being a criminal, being deemed a criminal, being deemed every single derogatory term that you've just identified. And so what would expungement do? Allow you to assimilate into that very system that was created to reject you. That's what they're pushing. Let's think about it. That's what you're pushing.
Expungements are an embarrassment for anybody who's ever been a criminal and did a crime and gotten expungements. Myself. Expungements are for criminals who have fulfilled their duty to the society, to the judge, to whoever they committed a crime against. That's what expungements are for. So you mean to tell me I was a victim to this war that was exacted on me? And America had a war against its own citizens for the last 50 years. And you're going to treat me like I'm the criminal getting it with an expungement? Expungements are designed for criminals who've done crimes, who've done something wrong. And here you did a good job, so now we will expunge what you did against our society. The victimization don't stop. The arrest never stopped. For you to say, hey, you can erase your crimes against me, America, before you before you paid us anything, haven't given us $1. You're talking about a trillion-year war. And you forced drugs on our parents, on us, on our children. You forced drugs into our community just so you can say, oh, look at those monsters over there. Look at those animales. Look at those monsters over there. Those are animals over there. They give drugs to their own people. They kill their own people. This is what this war was about. It was about making folks into animals, killing each other, and then collecting the commodity. The jail systems was just a product of that. The jail systems was just a product of whoever they didn't kill or whoever they couldn't do this to. They just arrest them and make money off them. You know, you making $100 off of each inmate that's in jail every day. Every day, over $100 off of every inmate. Every day, over $100 is made from everybody sitting in that jail. Every day. Every single body. Over $100. That's just a small part of the war on drugs. Ain't that something? Mass incarceration is just a small part of the war on drugs. Just a small. And I told you how many people in jail? You want me to tell you? Well, I'm going to tell you the biggest, most dangerous tool that they use in this war? The school systems. The American school systems.
Push that propaganda.
This is where they teach us all that. This is where they teach you a failure. By third grade, if you haven't assimilated, then you're more than likely going to go to the school to prison pipeline. That's why they call it school to prison pipeline.
And they use that data to count the number of beds that they need to have ready for you. They use that data. They use the reading data. They look at the children with these standardized test scores because, again, this is a process of assimilation we're talking about. So if you have not been able to assimilate successfully in our education system so that by the point of third grade, you are reading on what they've deemed to be the third grade level, they can determine the trajectory of your life path and systematically position you to become a victim to the prison pipeline. And to further support that, when it wasn't, when the system, the pipeline wasn't producing enough, they introduced police officers. They started calling them resource officers. First it was the DARE officers, then it was resource officers in our school systems, and then it just flat out policing our students. And so when a disciplinary infraction occurred, perhaps the child had some form of drug paraphernalia, even, instead of them receiving discipline, counseling, dealing with the administration having to address the child, they simply turn them over to the police and enter them into the criminal system, the legal system.
Now, I just posted a post about Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges is 66 years old. Now, 66 years old. I forget what age. Was she 9? I forget how old she was when they did.
I think she was 6.
Well, they did the forced integrations with her. So, and this is when black folks, pretty much had to force white folks to allow us in their schools, American schools. But one thing we never forced them to do was give us representation in what's being taught. And that's one of the most detrimental things I believe that is happening to our community. I think this type of schooling has made more thugs, made more criminals than anything. You understand me? When you are taking children, children, I'm always amazed at my infant, not even 1 year old, how they pick things up. So you're telling me you put children in this school, black and brown children in these schools, where they aren't edified at all. Our history isn't taught to us. Only thing we talk about is white greatness. Everything that's black or brown countries is pretty much third world countries or countries that are, need white aid. They never talked about in favorable lights. And when you look at the discovery, the history, that Black people were on the planet millions of years. We were on the planet millions of years conservatively. Check out your boy no, not, but you can check out that. You can check out Michael Cremo, Forbidden Archaeology, but your boy, not Robert Wicks, he can't, Williams, Nevin Williams. What is Nevin?
Is it William Nevins?
William Nevins or William Nevins, right? I'll check.
I don't have mine.
Check out your boy William Nevins. Check out your boy William Nevins, an archaeologist who was finding Black folks in America, finding ancient, full blown societies, not just fragments and this and that. He found entire civilizations in the Tertiary era of Black folks. In the Tertiary era, there wasn't supposed to be no people on the planet during the Tertiary era. That's what we taught. So we have a long history, conservatively, a long history before any white folks was on the planet. But yet and still, we're not nowhere in the history. They teach us we never built anything, which is a lie. The first castles was in Nubia. They still up. You got castles. You got the first buildings, those square structured, rectangle style buildings in Nubia that still stand till this very day. You got buildings that were built, castles that were built in Africa that are still standing till this very day. First castles was built in Africa. Matter of fact, all the languages come from these places that don't have a script. No European language has a script. The word European is an African goddess, Europa. So you're talking about a people who are standing on the backs of our discoveries and what we did. We civilized the planet, before white folks was even here. And now look at the situation we're in. That's kind of that's an odd way to treat your father and mother. Black folks is the father and the mother of the planet. This is just science. This is just history. But we're not good enough to make it in the history books. We're not good enough to make it in the American education system. I think we are. I think it's just white supremacy. No. I know it's white supremacy. And Black and brown children deserve to be taught the truth about their history, at least. If you don't want to teach white children, you can teach white children whatever you want to teach them. But you're going to teach Black and brown children white supremacy at the expense of their self-worth. Black and brown children. That's why I said the biggest thing going on with the war on drugs is that the school systems. You are attacking Black and brown children with misinformation for the sake of white children to be able to get white supremacy. You understand? And everybody's looking around. What should we do? Black people need reparations. We just need to be taught, our children to be taught the truth. And we will end it all. It will be
then left alone.
It will be left alone.
And then left alone.
We just need, the information technology, you can go on your computer, laptop, whatever, and get all of this information. Like, why are we still lying to our children? And the reason why Black people are having the problem we are having in America with our communities, lack thereof, is the school systems. Flooding these prison systems because of the school systems. We don't know who we are. You can't teach a child, hey, edify everybody else that doesn't look like you. And you didn't do anything. You didn't contribute anything. Matter of fact, you didn't do nothing until white folks came and saved you with slavery. That's what we're taught. We taught we were saved through slavery. We were on our knees building mud huts until white folks came and saved us and brought us to America and advanced us through civilizations and all this other stuff like that. This is what we're taught in America. Black people, Black children. This is what they believe. Look at Africa. You want to live in Africa now? You better be glad white folks came over there and got you. This is what we taught. All of this is a part of this war on drugs. So this 50-year demarker that they are making on the war on drugs, whoop-de-doo. But before the war on drugs, you was calling it something else. It was called something else. You know?
Yeah, facts. It perpetuated, and I guess, I like to say the phrase made it more sophisticated, but everything that we talk about, that the issues that we're facing, the same issues, you go back to the time of the civil rights movement, and we're dealing with the same issues. And when the civil rights movement came out, here it is now, we're talking about equity through legalization, and we see the same issue emerging. And what does that tell us? We know what the outcome's going to be. The outcome's going to be, fast forward 10, 15 years from now, those who suffered the most still are going to be suffering. They're still going to be marginalized, still fighting for some form of dignity. Let's just start there, just a level of a microdome of dignity. And then those who may have been marginalized in some other fashion, particularly, during the civil rights movement and prior to then, when we look at the women's rights movement and how they capitalized on that opportunity. The same thing with immigrants coming into the country, capitalized, because folks are okay with identifying whiteness as a social construct, but then they don't go any further in terms of determining, well, what does this construct look like? Because years ago, not everyone was white. The Italians, the Irish, they came over here. They weren't considered white. But as our system gets more sophisticated in how whiteness is centered, people do everything that they possibly can to assimilate to that. And when you don't, those who don't are deemed criminals. Now, it doesn't matter what a Black person tries to do, doesn't matter how much they try to change their voice, dress properly, sit up, use the best diction that they can according to Webster and Merriam. It doesn't matter, because your Black skin will always precede you. Change your name. Give your children names that are streamlined, maintenance, or centered around what are deemed conventional names. And none of those things change that fact. And that's why we are constantly, it doesn't matter. And to the point that you've said in another statement, it doesn't matter. You take a Black person who is wealthy, when we're talking about millions and $100 million of wealth, that wealth pales in comparison to a white person who has that same net worth. It just pales in comparison because of the stigma that our Black skin, the target that our Black skin holds in this country. And so when folks talk about the war on drugs, if you really pay attention to it, it is a war on the Black skin, Black and brown skin. That's what it boils down to.
That's what the numbers say. That's what the statistics say. But even more so, people just act like it's just the rest. I have to harp on the fact that it is these school systems. It's also
in order to justify the arrest, you have to have all of these things in place. You have to have a messaging to the community, the greater community at large, that these people are the ones pushing drugs in our communities. This is why it was a campaign. They said it themselves. They, being the United States government, said it themselves. And today marks the day that Nixon, they said, so 50 years ago, we're looking at 71, where Nixon said on June 17th that we're going to fight the infestation of drugs in our communities. We are going to launch a war on drugs. And his wife.
And now looking back and knowing that the American government put the drugs into the community, what were they telling you they were actually doing? They were launching on the infestation of who? The impurity, the Black folks, brown folks. You understand? We were the infestation. We were the drug. You understand me? They brought the drugs over here. Put the drugs in our community, because they said they had to fund a war. So it was a way for them to fund a war. Take advantage of these Black and brown folks. sow discord. These are war tactics. These are war tactics to destroy us, to destroy our community, to destroy our family structures. And we're still here. We're still here. We still got black families. My wife and I, we got a black. They set out to destroy the black family with this war on drugs thing 50 years ago, and we still here standing strong. So now they got something else. They're gonna figure something. They done figure something else out. Something that's politically correct. Rest assured, it's politically correct. It'll be politically correct killing and destroying our communities and destroying our family structures. This was politically correct. Everybody agreed to this war. Now you're talking about a war that you dumped trillions of dollars in annually, made trillions of dollars off of this war, and you don't want to address it to heal it with wartime aid.
So that's part of that's actually not even politically correct, because other wars that the government orchestrated, they do address it with wartime aid. And here it is. It's always been called a war on drugs. No one ever questioned that aspect of it. And the data showed who was targeted from that war. And now, fast forward 50 years later, now that that war has affected and manifested itself or made its way into the white communities, where we see white communities, their children being affected by drugs, and what was in place for drugs was only a criminal solution, and now they're saying, oh no, we need rehabilitation. We need rehabilitation for our children. It's overtaking of whether it's
that's why they're saying that the war on drugs is ending, because they're no longer going to use the same rules with their children, with their community. Now that the drugs is in their community and their children are on the drugs, they don't want to use the same rules. So they're ending the war on drugs so they can charge. So that's this way. When you go in front of a judge or cop can be objective. They can charge you however they want to charge you. You understand me? They charge you got the same drugs as a white person got, but you're going to get charged with something else, a sale or something else. The white person, they're going to get charged. They're going to get that end of the war on drugs charge.
Possession charge.
They're going to get, a slap on the wrist or something, because it's the end of the war on drugs. They're going to hang you, though. They're going to hang you. You understand me? So it's just a way for them to widen the parameters so they don't have to charge their own children like they charge black folks. And show me the war's over by the numbers. Show me the war's over by the numbers. This is why we can't be this. This is real. These are real people on the ground. Real people on the ground went through this, still going through this. You can't sit up there and celebrate shit that ain't really going to end the war. Like people talking about, they're going to stop arresting children. That sounds good. Stop arresting children for what? For possession. That's so they don't have to arrest. So when they arrest these white children, they don't have to charge them as possession. But when a cop arrests a black kid with an ounce on him, rest assured he's going to charge him for sale or intent to sell. You don't have to have no evidence to have intent to sell. And then, if there was a white cat, he can go, fight it with a judge and afford to get in front of a judge. With us, it don't even matter. You can get in front of a black judge. It'd be Kamala Harris up there, ready to hang you. You understand? Ready to hang you. Another black person who Kamala Harris ain't even black, but everybody say she black, but ready to hang you. You understand me? So they done taught us well, and where they teach Kamala at? These school systems. Where they teach Kamala Harris that she wasn't nothing. They taught her that in these school systems. You understand? That's the only reason why you look at your own peoples and do that. Because they taught you that in the school systems. They trained us to hate ourselves. Trained us.
That's part of the assimilation, because some folks may sit there and say, well, I don't hate myself. Our society is centered around whiteness. That's where the phrase is white is right comes from. And, some may say, I don't use that phrase. I don't see. And some may even go so far as to say, I don't see color. Well, if you don't see color, then you are admitting that you are disregarding an element or an aspect of people who have color. So that in and of itself means you are centering your lens on whiteness, absence of color.
And you don't jump from being abused, being ignored, being killed to, everything's okay. When do we get to heal? When do we, first of all, when does the public, when do we address on a national level what we've been experiencing for the last 50 years? What was the war on drugs? What did the war on drugs entail? What happened? What was that? You can't just brush over that. 50 years? 50 years?
I think it's
children, 12 and 13 and 14-year-old children beaten up with guns in their face, being interrogated. Why? Because whatever you was calling it for their parents, whatever it was called, it knocked our daddies out, got them in jail, got our families all broken up, whatever it was, whatever systematic thing that y'all was doing to hate black folks and to destroy black folks and to destroy our families. And then you want to get over here, we get with this equity and they want to play. They want to play. When you're talking about equity in cannabis and this war on drugs, they want to play with a real one. I don't give a damn about none of these black groups, from the NAACP, who attacked us personally over some cannabis and a deal with MedMen in Cambridge, to any of you other black groups. I've been attacked. I'm not even going to go into mentioning them. I'm going to try not to go into mention them, because that's not the point.
And
we didn't come here to fight. How you come here? How you talking about white folks talking about, I'm sorry for the war on drugs, and black folks in the way of black folks getting what they supposed to get, because black folks is at the front of the line in these groups hedging us.
Somehow, I guess, and a lot of times you find with these groups, the organizations, individuals, folks, these are folks who have mastered that assimilation, right? And so they come and they've mastered the assimilation into this society of white-centeredness and want to bring a messaging. And so when it's time to address something as atrocious and astronomical as the war on drugs, they are okay. They are accepting of saying, oh, okay, well, this is a start. No, this started 50 years ago. They said they want to end it. So we can't start at the bottom with a pittance of, can we get expungement so that we can carry on and the rest of the industry, the rest of the country can move forward and with business as usual with in terms of making millions of dollars off of the backs of black and brown people, and never, ever addressing, ameliorating, elevating the very people that built this industry. And so that is the problem we see with these organizations when they come to the forefront and they serve as the intermediary that, okay, well, I'm going to speak on behalf of black folks. I'm going to champion these expungement weeks because now we're going to be able to have these records that were illegally and wrongfully imposed on our black and brown people, our black and brown men, children, and even women. And we're going to give them the opportunity to have that erased. And that's what they champion under the guise of, what would you say earlier? Rome wasn't built in a day.
And I get it.
We're not trying to build a city. We're trying to tear it down. And you know how you tear it down? You blow it up.
You know what? If y'all didn't have no solutions, that's cool. That would be cool with me. That would be cool with me, and I would think me and my wife was super special, and the ancestors just had their hands on us, and which they do. But when we came out with solutions, y'all attacked us. When we came out with solutions, in our naivety, when we came out with solutions, y'all attacked us, black groups. We in the equity program, in the cannabis industry, in Massachusetts. And when we came out with solutions, we was attacked.
Because the solutions were disruptive. And if you can't tell me you don't want status quo, but then you also don't want to be disruptive. Expungements, how is that disruptive? How is that disruptive? Expungements is let's quietly make this go away. That's what expungements.
Here it is. We have a solution in Massachusetts for equity, and we don't get invited to the seat of the table anywhere. But you know who they invite? They invite these black groups to come talk about equity in Massachusetts with no solutions, and they black folks with solutions in the equity. We're in the equity program in Massachusetts, but they're calling groups like M4MM from Florida. I know a white woman doing more equity for black folks in Florida than M4MM. Woman in Florida putting in more work for equity than M4MM. But why is you got to call these folks from out of state when you didn't call M4MM to get arrested, to get a secret indictment in 2016 in Massachusetts? I was right here. Local black folks in Massachusetts was right here to get arrested, to fill your jails up. But you want to call other folks from other states and tell them they need to speak intelligently on equity? You want to have folks who wasn't even a part of this war on drugs speaking on equity? You got mumbling black men up there who can't even speak intelligently. And that's who you got up there. I done wrote a book on equity about my experience and all of that. And I'm in the program. Yet, instead of a black man speaking on it, you want who speaking on it? Because black men, this happened to black men. The war on drugs happened to black men. Oh, I clicked the wrong one? That's okay. So that's going to go off. Yeah. The war on drugs happened to black men, black and brown men. So how come how come our stories aren't valid? How come everybody champions women? How come black men can't come and speak on what happened to them in this war? Brown men.
Well, that's if the war was ended, right?
This war that continues. That's why I'm saying. That's why you got all these folks telling you that the war's over. They don't even know because they ain't I've been a child. I was a child soldier since a teenager in this war. 40 years. They said it's 50 years. Damn, I was in this war this whole damn time because I'm 41 years old.
Born into it.
I was born into this war as a child soldier. I'll tell you when the war over. The war ain't over. They still doing it, and they gonna call it a different name if they do end the war on drugs. And I just told you why they increased the parameters. That's for white folks. That's for cops to be objective, and they're gonna be objective for white folks. That's for judges to be objective, and they're gonna be objective to white folks.
Subjective. They get to be
subjective.
Judge, jury. Yep.
Subject.
They get to determine how to impose the law, when to impose the law, and to what degree. And that's what we saw with the war on drugs. We saw that. It was codified. When you look at mandatory minimums, when you look at policies such as 3 strikes, when you look at the difference in terms of how they classified crack versus cocaine. So these were things that were codified, and now as they try to ease back out of it because they see the impact that this is having on their children, how it's infiltrated the white communities in a way that they weren't expecting, and now they realize, okay, we need systemic opportunities. We need to have that codified. Then now it becomes, how do we still continue the war on drugs, but we have to change the rules. And so, to your point, they widen the opportunity for subjectivity, meaning, so now cannabis is not, in and of itself, cannabis is not legal in your state. It's been legalized. But when they see you with a certain amount of cannabis, they can now make an assumption. And that's all it has to be. A presumption that your intent was to sell it. They did not decriminalize it. And so if we're going to say the war on drugs is over, then That means there is no way that any type of interaction with this drug can be criminalized. You would have to literally be poisoning folks, and even then, you would fall under the same laws and rules. You would have to demonstrate that you were trying to kill someone with some type of poisonous administration, or however you were trying to utilize the drug. Outside of that, there is no reason for us to have any type of criminal laws, even the civil fines, because what's going to happen, you don't have, they already know that traditionally Black people, brown people are the ones who do not have the funds and resources. This is why we're fighting against the bail system and so forth, because people are sitting in jail, and because they can't make bail, they can't even be able to exercise the fullness of their rights, right? And so here it is, there's still civil fines that can be tied to your interaction with this plant. And if you can't pay your civil fines, guess what can happen? You'll be arrested.
Guess what can happen? They can come to your house. They can be like, oh, what's up with your children? You know, all types of stuff.
Your rights are still being violated. And so this is why when we say the war on drugs has not ended, it's not ended until you've erased, eliminated all elements of that war. So to say that you were at war with another country, but then you remain there, your presence there, you continue to occupy that country, then you're still at war with that country.
And not just that, more than occupying us, we're still feeling the brunt of it. When you're talking about Black folks, it's, like you were talking about cigarettes. It's Black folks be arrested for water, kids selling water.
Selling water. Mind you, white children are in their neighborhoods, in their blocks, selling lemonade, selling whatever they want to, whatever they can sell.
And that arrest also comes with an assault from a public servant. You're going to assault your ass for some water, just like they assaulted Michael Brown and killed his ass for a cigarette. So it's because they said he was selling cigarettes.
Eric
Gardner, nonviolent crime, because they said he was selling cigarettes. He had to lose his life. No weapons on him except his skin color, Black. That's this war on drugs. So while white folks is trying to compartmentalize our struggle and acting like, oh, it's over because we widened the laws, or because
it's legalized. It's meaning they've monetized it, and it can be taxed now.
You ain't legalized me doing anything with my Black skin. Driving while Black is a crime. Walking while Black, stop and frisk. Talking while Black, get you killed from police. Public servants, mind you. You as a private citizen have more rights. You got more rights than a cop. When that cop is in that uniform, they're not a private citizen no more. They are a public servant. And you have, as a private citizen, you have more rights than a public servant. But they killing us in the streets like they have the rights and authority, and our government isn't backing us up. What do you call that? That's war on drugs. You can kill Black folks and government don't do nothing. They don't lose their insurance. They got the backing from the whole police force, from them fucking white community. They riding around with blue stickers on their car, racist ass pieces of shit. I protect the blue. Why are you saying that? My father was a cop. You talking about white folks who got no family in law enforcement. I got family in law enforcement. I got uncles who was in law enforcement. And family, my father. And they talking that blue shit. How come Black cops ain't talking that shit? I know Black cops ain't talking that shit, and you got citizens talking that shit. That's race shit. And who is that? Poor white folks. You race baiting poor white folks because they mad that they not a part of this white American dream. So they want to look for somebody to be mad at. Black folks. So that's psychologically. You got these poor white folks, cops, in these situations, and they mad. And they killing Black folks. And that's pretty much the trade-off with the American government. Go ahead. Act out your racist fantasies, white folks, on Black people. While we do the money shit and all other shit. And then you got poor white folks telling us, hey, black folks, don't worry about that. Focus on the money there. Focus on these people with the money. They're doing it. Look at the money. They're making this stuff up on TV. They ain't making it up. Well, they don't show when white men get killed, and they don't show when black men get killed. They don't show when black men get killed. I got a friend who was killed by police in front of his mother.
Pick and choose.
In front of his mother in his own driveway with no weapons on him. And they choked him to death, 2 of them. 2 police officers. He was like a brother to me. Good friend, brother to me. We all grew up together. I loved him. And they killed, and it was never on the news. And they killed him right in front of his mother. His mother called the police on the police. His mother called the police on the police, and it never made the news. So they don't put it on there when they kill black men either. Only a few of them make up there on the news. So for you white folks mad that they didn't put it up there because they killed the white man and nobody didn't make the news, it don't always make the news when they kill black men. When they kill black people. Look at the statistics.
I was going to say they have a statistic on how many unarmed black men.
Unarmed black people right now, on average, I think it was like 1,700, something like that last year. More than that, probably. But that was unarmed black folks. The police killed. So that's about, on average, 3 unarmed black people being killed every day. On average in America, 3 unarmed black people are killed every day. That's war on drugs shit. So it don't matter the ones that, it do matter, the ones that make the news. But the numbers, you have to look at the numbers. Got to look at the numbers. It ain't about being emotional. It's using your brains. Look at the numbers. The numbers say, damn, we are literally, this is 3 a day. That's genocide. Black people are living in genocidal conditions. 3 unarmed black people a day, men, women, children. That's you. We are living in genocidal conditions, black folks, in America. And on top of that, like I just explained to you, you got these school systems that are teaching this white supremacy to black children. This shit ain't even true. Like the stuff, when you go fact check the stuff they teaching us in school, it's not even true. It's not true. And then you find origins of us there. They're teaching a white-centered indoctrination to black children. That's criminal. And you mean to tell me you wonder why these black adults don't have no self-worth to think that that's all we deserve is expungements?
Well, we don't deserve more than anything than that.
Oh, that's a good start.
Or we don't have the authority to demand more.
Or we don't have the authority or right to demand more. That's why black folks have self-worth issues. And these intelligent ones. Because these are the ones who soaked it up the most. You know, the ones who were pushed out, never been accepted. We have never been accepted by society. So it's not hard for us to get it. We the ones who always be saying, they doing it, they doing it. And then the intelligent black people be like, who? Who is they? Who is they? I'm like, I don't know their names, but it's a system. It's happening to me. I promise you. And look, they saying sorry for the war on drugs. So that's who they is, intelligent black folks. For years, y'all been saying, who is they? So the government coming out saying, hey, sorry for this war on drugs on you. That's who they is. They had a war on our community. Wake up. Intelligent black folks. I'm not talking to niggas because we already knew that. We was never accepted. And that whole school thing, I think, had a big thing to do with it. Subconsciously, I feel like I just didn't get the information. I was always getting kicked out of school, always in the principal's office, always getting in trouble. I was considered the bad kid in school. He couldn't learn. He wasn't teachable. And I was called a failure, and that was it. But the thing about me is I really love to learn. I come to love to learn information around 23 years old really started sitting down with books and information and sounding out words until I was a better reader, until I can I can write books. I've written books. But I really love information. I really love to read. I really love to learn. But that's not what I was told my whole childhood. I was told I didn't like to learn. That's what I was told. And I was thinking maybe it was the information. My hypothesis is these thugs are created, these gangs, these niggas in America are created because we have a subconscious disdain for this thing that's going on in these school systems. The people don't look like me who you are edifying. And maybe my spirit subconsciously never could get along with that. So I had to live as an outcast on society based off this war you was having with me. And I was an enlisted soldier. I was a thug nigga, a street nigga. Thug nigga, street nigga. That was I guess that was our uniform. The black skin was our uniform. I guess that was the name of our army. Street nigga. Thug. Hoodlum. That was the name of our army that you was having a war against your own citizens. So, but the uniform is your skin color, black folks. It don't matter if you was arrested or not. You were still a part of this war because you had to go through these school systems where they edifying white folks at your expense. So you had to be psychologically conditioned against yourself. Turned on the TV, all of these white stations, what do they call stations or
news stations, TV stations, channels?
Yeah, channels, stations, programming, all the white programming, or pretty much white folks control all the programming. Because when I was coming up, we had some good black shows now. You know what I'm saying? We still had some good black shows, but it was mostly, some good times, something like that. You want to have a superhero had to be white, had to be Incredible Hulk, had to be Superman, had to be Wolverine. These was my superheroes, that I like coming up. There wasn't no black superheroes, and that's another psychological thing. You understand me? And, that still pursues it to this day. With the on-demand, the cartoons, my daughter wrote a spoken word about how many black cartoons and black characters was on these cartoons and, were in edifying positions. And, it was like 80-something cartoons. And I think she was like, how many? Two or three were black cartoons out of 80-something.
And so to that point, since everything that happened during COVID and with the level of attention that George Floyd's death brought to Black lives, period, there have been more programming, if you will, that have come out, more books, more art, more cartoons, more of these stories that have main characters that are black and brown children. However, what we're still seeing, what the children are still saying is we don't see the roundedness,
How many children, black anime and they got out there? Exactly, black folks y'all out there watching anime. You mean to tell me they ain't got no black and brown crayon? All you adults.
We have comics who are creating black superheroes, but they have not. Those aren't things that aren't being mainstreamed into our school systems. And to your point, that the educators know this. They know that if you want to engage your students, you have to tap into their interests. You have to tap into things that they would be able to relate to, recognize, and they can find some form of edification. And so what you're saying is exactly right. That the research they know that. We know exactly what we're doing. And this is why, there was a push to have more books that had female protagonists. There was a push to have more content that were written by female authors, because it was so heavily male dominated, with the mainstream stories. They wanted to see more, and then also diverse characters. But the characters were still always white, but diverse in the sense of some coming from city life, some coming from country life, some coming from different parts of the world. And so all of these are elements that our educators and those who control the curriculum, the Houghton Mifflins and the Prentice Halls of our societies, when they're putting these books and materials together, they are very well aware of the programming and the power that they have in influencing the minds of our children, who oftentimes are forced to read these books in schools. And if you, of course, you see this and you're like, another one of these books that I cannot relate to, you know, is there a Black girl in this? Does she look like me? No. And so you have to disconnect. You have to almost a form of rejection. In corporate world, they talk about putting on your polar bear suit, because your brown bear suit isn't accepted. So you put on your polar bear suit where you carry yourself a certain way, you act as though that is how you operate. And then when you leave that corporate space, you can be yourself. You can take that off. And sometimes the assimilation is so hard, and the rejection against being who you are is so great. Some folks don't want to take it off. But then they'll go to these people and say, hey, you know, you're familiar with brown bears. You're familiar with how they operate. Help us come up with a solution. And not realizing that your mindset has been so conditioned to think in a way that is rejecting of our culture, of our communities. And a lot of the times you see proposals that simply push the status quo in a more digestible way. What do I mean pushing the status quo? You will put people who are in positions of leadership that are Black and brown, but you still limit what they can do to support an agenda, or to push an agenda that would actually edify the Black and brown community. Case in point, you have in the education system, you'll have schools that have principals, superintendents that are Black and brown. But if you go and ask these school system, these directors, folks that you look at the city of Boston, the majority of their staff, including their leadership staff, they have done a phenomenal job of hiring Black and brown faces compared to the rest of the state of Massachusetts, not the rest of the country, compared to the rest of the state of Massachusetts. But ask them, can they change the curriculum? Can they change the content of the curriculum? And no, because we all, it doesn't matter where you are in this country, have adopted the Common Core Standard. And the Common Core Standards dictates what is taught. And here you have places like Texas fighting to make sure that curriculum that's going to teach a different narrative, that's going to tell a different version of history from a different perspective, a different lens, and include content that edifies people that would challenge the white greats that have traditionally been edified, pushing back against this in our legislative offices, in Congress right now. So it is very systemic, it's very systematic. And here it is, you know, we're talking about 50 years, and we put this on, we're talking about what Nixon did with the war on drugs, but it started before then. That was just the crux. That was the turning point. Like you said, a time in history, June 17th, that people want to identify, where the campaign was codified in such a way that we got the phrase war on drugs. Because you go back in Biden, who was our current president and supposed to be Mr. Progressive, but when you talk to the same Black leaders that we're talking about, Biden is the same one that said he was tough on crime. And what did that look like? He was tough on crime during the era in which our mass incarceration was established. This was during the era where tough on crime in what communities? In the Black and brown communities. Tough on crime where we saw the escalation in the creation of prisons, the privatization of prisons, where we saw the monetization of prisons, and they had to fill those prisons so that they continue to make money. And where did they go? They went to the neighborhoods, and they had to push the war on drugs campaign because they had to have something to arrest people for. Black and brown folks, they couldn't sit there and just willy-nilly continue to say, oh, this Black man whistled at a white woman, so we're gonna lock him up. They couldn't do that anymore. They had to get more sophisticated. So they created this campaign, and they put trillions of dollars behind this campaign. And it was orchestrated not just from the end of arrest, like you said, not just from the end of pushing this propaganda in our education system, but also bringing in the drugs, bringing in, because you have to ask yourself, if the people were so poor living in the projects, where were they getting this? How were they flying to Nicaragua? How were they getting these? How were they bringing these drugs from other places in the country, let alone in the world, and getting them into these depressed neighborhoods? Somehow you mean to tell me that the black people were so sophisticated and were able to circumvent the system at such a level that they could bring these drugs in and no one know where it was coming from, but they were always able to get the people with possession and then trump it up to say, you know what, if you possessed it, then you were probably going to sell it. And this is where that subjectivity piece comes. So there's a whole story. Even now, we're not even capturing the fullness of it. There's a whole story tied to
one
it.
of the biggest.
I'm
gonna tell you something like that. We soldiers. That's by definition who you had a war against. You had a war against us. We soldiers. So when you talk about the folks who got arrested and all that stuff like that, we soldiers. That's what happened to us. But one of the biggest things about the war on drugs is everything that happened around it. Like they say, like with the cannabis industry, the ancillary businesses.
Yep.
All of the things
These
that
are all
happen.
the businesses that aren't tied directly to the plant.
All the things that happened. What happened? They died?
It shouldn't have.
No, let me see.
And it never made the news.
Twitter acting up. You want to do it again? All the things that happened, all the things that happened around the war on drugs. You understand me? All of the dehumanizing that had to take place, just like Hitler in Nazi Germany. He had to do a lot of propaganda on the TV. He put up flyers everywhere, dehumanizing Jews, white Jews, dehumanizing white Jews. Same thing with us. All throughout the TV, throughout this war, you had to do this propaganda campaign to destroy our character as people. So they just thought we was animals. A white cop from another neighborhood who ain't grew up around no black people, you could just set him in the police force in a black neighborhood and he'll do what he need to do. Start killing black folks. Start arresting black folks. Start
setting them up.
Start stopping and frisking, because everything is suspect to him. And nobody is doing anything about the psychological damaging about that. That's what I said. That's the first thing you do. The first thing they do, they try to run and jump to equity programs, okay, but they never even alerted the public to what this end of the war on drugs is supposed to be, or what the war on drugs was, what happened, what was this war. Nobody educated the public. Like, tell the American people what this. If you really sorry, government, and you didn't have nothing, nobody living had anything to do with it and wanted to have anything to do with it, how come we not exposing all of it? How come we trying to keep it around? And how come we are still attacking black and brown children in these school systems with this white supremacy indoctrination in the school systems, which is, to me, one of the major parts of the war on drugs? We casualties. Let me explain something to you. We chose this lifestyle out of self-worth, out of a sense of self-pride. You understand? So that's why a lot of us checked out of school. There was no self-worth there, no self-pride there. Now, how are you going to attack children with a lack of, with something that's attacking their self-worth and self-pride, sense of self, so white children can feel great about themselves? So you're talking about the people who chose this lifestyle. No, these people are warriors. We are warriors. We didn't even know it. You understand me? But you're talking about you persecuted us for the last 50 years behind a fake drug war. We are to be celebrated as heroes in this thing. It ain't about victimization. We made ourselves strong in the midst of this, and it's still going on. It's live? Or press live?
Push it.
I don't think you can push it.
Right there.
Oh, right there. Yeah.
You're going to get this information today, Twitter.
Yeah. So you're talking about the people who chose self-worth and sense of self-pride, and everybody's celebrating us around America. Everybody trying to talk like they talk in the hood. Everybody's using slang in corporate America to sell their products, everything, their jingles. Everybody's singing a new jingle. Whoop-dee, everything whoop-dee. Pop Smoke for the woo. You know, everything. You know, every time a gang member come out, Snoop Dogg been doing it. What's the other dude? Gang. You know, these niggas be making jingles the whole world singing. You know, and celebrate that culture, celebrate these thugs, these vigilantes in the midst of white supremacy, in the midst of these over-aggressive police. They still gonna be out here warring with each other and warring with police. So, you know, even through the midst of this, we still celebrate it. Why? Because subconsciously, deep down, everybody know it and see it. Everybody know it and see it. That's why they celebrate us. You understand? Now you talking about you ending the war or not? You ending the war or not? Because there's still children being arrested. How dare you come out talk acting like children ain't still being arrested, black children ain't still being arrested for cannabis.
And you're talking not just in states.
The numbers don't say that. The numbers don't say that.
We're talking about states where it has gone legal.
We talking about Massachusetts. Read the ACLU report. The numbers say black children are still being arrested. They still arresting black children. Why? Because that's when they get you. That's why they're still trying to get you, because they know, oh, this black boy gonna be a black man one day. Let's get him now. That's how they treat us in America. That's this war on drugs. You want to talk about the war on drugs? Way more than just arrests. All you black folks been through it, whether you've been arrested or not. You've been through it. You've been through the dehumanization. You've had to walk through America and be looked at less than, because that's what they was doing on the TVs. That's what they was doing on the cartoons. That's what they was doing on everything. They wasn't showing us in no beautiful light. They showing white folks in the beautiful light, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, telling all the white fairy tales. Disney and everybody. This is what subconsciously.
When did Disney finally come out with a?
This is we 40 years old. This is when you know they get you and subconsciously implant into black folks less than this. That's war on drugs. It's not just arrest, not just black folks selling dope. Which, if you look at the war on drugs, we was on pot more than we was on dope. So you're talking about a war that still ensues through the school systems. Through the representation of industry ownership. We don't control the TV industry, the cinema industry, whatever that industry is called. We don't control that industry. We don't control any industry in America. Other ethnic groups control industries when they come to America.
And they control industries in their respective nations and countries.
And they look at black folks like, what's wrong with these stupid black people? Why don't they control that industry? Da 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 da. Because we being persecuted. That's why. Still, you understand me? And that's one of the things in these equity programs. It happened to black and brown folks. You got people like Cape Verdeans who get to be white and black, or Spanish folks too. Even though in America, Spanish folks was persecuted, but you in Spain or wherever you go, Portugal. You have a black in Cape Verde. That's why they sign. You have these light-skinned Cape Verdeans. They sign white on the applications because they light-skinned. They say, I'm not black. We got black people in my country. I'm not black.
Except for if there's benefits tied to it.
Except if now
does select white and black.
Now that it's equity involved, or it's something giving black folks something, which they haven't given us shit. Now everybody black. You understand? But Cape Verdeans get it in America because they look like Spanish folks. They look like Puerto Ricans. You understand? But when they filling out their applications, they filling out white. They not filling out black. This happened to black and brown folks. It happened to minorities too. But it happened to black and brown folks. So when all these minorities come to America, they black, or they minority because it's considered a black position or whatever. A brown type of position, but in their countries they considered white. And them black folks, we don't never see them folks. We won't never see them folks. Do you know it's millions of black folks in Mexico? It's millions of black folks in Mexico that look just like me and you. Look like all them heads that you see. Olmec heads. It's millions of black folks in Mexico. We don't never see them black folks. We see the orange Mexican come through, you know, or the white Mexican, because you know Mexicans got white Mexicans too. They got Mexicans that can pass as white. So, you know,
they consider them brown.
Huh?
They consider them brown.
No, I'm from New York. We know what you talk about. You got black Spanish, you got brown Spanish, and you got white Spanish. You got them Spanish folks that be acting like they white. You can't tell if they white or not. You know what I'm saying? And then so you got, you know, but the Spanish, you know, y'all be rocking all them colors. And then you got the black Spanish. Those are the niggas. That's like Fat Joe. Even Jennifer Lopez, she more like black Spanish. What's her name? Cardi B. Cardi B considered she black. She's like, I'm a nigga. You know, because
we have some that are more black than that. The Afro Latinas.
You have Afro Latinas that, you know, but I'm talking about those who take on the characteristics. I'm talking, yeah. You have
they embrace the black culture.
Yeah, that's what I said. You have a black culture. You have a black culture.
Okay, I got you.
And we don't really necessarily see those folks either. In New York, you see some black Dominicans. You see black Dominicans. You know what I'm saying? But look, Haitians are not considered part
of Latin America.
Part of Latin America because of their skin color. But you got black folks all throughout Latin America.
Well, I mean, again, these are all constructs that people kind of arbitrarily try to say that they tie to the folks that colonized.
Everybody's just slaves, I guess. They had the most advanced boats on the planet because they could do something that they still can't do today. You talking about billions of black folks all throughout the world. They talking about got there through slavery. But like I said, go check out your boy William Nivens. I hope I'm saying his name right. I'm gonna drop a post on your boy. I'm gonna do a little history. William Nevins. William Nevins.
Yeah, I thought it was Nevins.
Nevins, something like that. Yeah, but he wrote a lot. He found a lot of black civilizations all throughout the world. But back to this is all.
Yeah, so taking it to, like you said, right? So here we are, fast forward, folks want to celebrate. And it's interesting that this is coming on also the heels of Juneteenth or whatever, which is the day after tomorrow. And everyone wants to celebrate these days of recognition. And you have to ask yourself, what are we recognizing? We're recognizing history? Because we sure aren't recognizing progress. And to say that to have legalized cannabis is progress, you have to ask progress for whom? For whom? For whom is that progress? Because you haven't made progress for those who have been harmed the most. That's what the language is. We want to help those who have been harmed the most. And the minute you say you want to help those who have been harmed the most, what do we see? That's who gets helped the least. And the harm continues. It's perpetuated through the optics that we have all these programs. Here it is in Massachusetts. We have the social equity program, technical assistance. If you follow the Cannabis Control Commission, they just released information that they're going to be opening up their third cohort starting next week for the social equity program. So if you live in any of these areas that they've identified that has been traditionally disproportionately impacted by enforcement, meaning law enforcement disproportionately arrested black and brown folks in these areas. Not the fact that you were black or brown, but that you live in these areas where this was happening, you can qualify for the social equity program if you have an arrest record or someone that is in your immediate family and they have more details on that. You can qualify for these programs. And through these programs, you can get access to technical assistance. The technical assistance will help you either get a job in the industry, help you with reentry into society, help you pursue a license to open up a business, a cannabis business or an ancillary business, meaning a business that may not touch the plant directly or may not need to be licensed by the Cannabis Control Commission, but they'll support you in perhaps if you want to do something like graphic design specifically for cannabis folks, or if you want to provide accounting services, whatever your skill set is. And so all of that is great, but when you look at, and they still have not put out this data as to who is benefiting from this, where are the people who've been harmed the most? The people who have been harmed the most by the war on drugs, oftentimes they don't even know how to navigate the process to even access this system. If you aren't tied to someone or a certain organization that has the information, they're not bringing it to the jails. They're not bringing it to the probation officers and saying, hey, you have someone that has a cannabis arrest, a marijuana offense on their record. We need you to make sure that they know about this program and what this program is going to do for them. They're not doing that. Before we can even get to the point of talking about, okay, so they do have these programs. Are these programs actually of benefit to those who have been harmed? Are we seeing those who have been harmed that want to just get a job? Are they able to actually get a job that is providing a quality of life for them, that they can not only sustain their family, but they can also heal from the trauma of what they've had to deal with all these years? Are they given opportunities that they're able to grow in this industry? Because that's what they were trying to do when they were supposedly, for a lot of folks, right? Because if it was just a possession charge, they were just trying to enjoy a level of quality of life with this plant, right? Are we seeing Black and brown businesses being opened up and ownership in our industry? And we haven't seen that. We see 400, 500 plus people in our equity program here in Massachusetts. And if you look at the data that they just put out, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think there's upwards of like 125, somewhere between 125, maybe 175 folks who are part of the equity program, who have submitted an application for licensure. But who are these people? Are they Black and brown owners? Are they people who have arrests? What are they people who live in an area and were able to capitalize on this program? And that data hasn't been made distinct. And so until it's made distinct, you have to speculate, one, why aren't they making that distinction? Are they waiting for a big aha to say, oh, okay, haha, yeah, these are who's made it through the pipeline and have been able to secure a license? And I say secure a license, we're still talking about 7, at most 10, depending on what data set you're looking at, 10 licenses from equity people that are operational, 10 out of 248. And so we're looking at that's not even 10%. That's not even 5%, because 5% of 248 would put us at about 12 and a half licensees. Between 12 and 13 licenses. We don't even have that. We have 10. And I'm curious to know where that 10 comes from, because when I look at the data, I see 7 that are operational in Massachusetts. So go down this conversation of what are we celebrating, right? With the 50-year anniversary. We get to say 50 years that we've been dealing with this, 50 years that we continue to see this, 50 years that where have we moved the needle? We moved the needle from, it is no longer automatic, right? That if you possess cannabis, that you are going to be arrested. That's no longer automatic. That's the progression. That's the progress that we've made in 50 years.
I mean, we're talking about the war on drugs. Understand me? So we have to get outside of the box of just arrest, one. We're talking about the dehumanization of a people. We're talking about police who haven't, you ask most cops, I haven't mass incarcerated. I haven't been a part of mass incarceration, most cops. So they haven't even accepted that fact. It's a lie to them.
It's not part of their training.
Not true.
It's not part of their training. So if it's not part of your training, and
the war
looking
ain't over.
Out of it,
the war ain't over. They haven't told their soldiers that they was even in a war. It's just rhetoric that they just pumping in publicly. So ain't no war over. You still got cops hunting Black folks. You understand me? If they haven't told police that they've been mass incarcerating us, I asked the cop. Because I was asking. I've been asking. I went around asking. Collectively, I asked about 10 police officers. They all said they never mass incarcerated Black people. They wasn't part of mass incarceration of Black folks in Massachusetts. because I was interested. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they saying the war on drugs is over, so you was a part of mass incarceration. I wasn't a part of mass incarceration. I never mass incarcerated black folks. You guys unfairly arrest. So either you believe, which I found that either they believe that black folks is inherently criminal, or you believe that it was mass incarceration. It was unfair. So you got two groups. You got groups that believe that every arrest and all the stuff they doing to black folks was justified, and black people and brown people are just inherently criminal. That's a part of the dehumanization. You can't say it.
And I think for folks to provide some context, when you see these campaigns like a Black Lives Matter movement, you see campaigns around fighting for justice and equality of rights. It's because there was a campaign to deny that. There was a campaign, a systematic, orchestrated process from our government, from the top down, from our federal government to our state governments to the local enforcement, systematic approach to how they were going to attack and address and deal with black and brown people, black and brown communities, black and brown families. And they leveraged drugs. They created they identified a plant and deemed it a drug, and then they leverage all these other drugs and say, we are going to couch our campaign under this, it sounds nice, the war on drugs. And what did we end up having? What was the outcome of that?
A war on your own citizens. The dehumanization far extends to drugs. It had to start somewhere. As I've said, but school systems and everything else. But
so they used that campaign, and what did they do with that campaign? In order for you to embrace it and to separate you, because they had to foster a cognitive dissonance in our society, and so the criminality wasn't tied to the drugs themselves. The criminality was who they constantly were putting in terms of in the forefront as to who were the ones engaging in the criminality. And they were saying it was black and brown folks. It was saying that's where the drugs are. That's who we're arresting.
And at the same time,
that's how you further the dehumanization that existed since prior to then, with everything from Jim Crow to redlining and the impact that had on people's finances, both white and black folks. We can get into that if folks want to. Prior to that, with slavery.
Yeah, so, with it all, every time, all of the systems.
As they got more sophisticated, they figured out a more sophisticated way to continue to perpetuate the dehumanization. And so we're at this point today in time, in 2021, where black folks are simply, and brown folks, and are simply saying, can we live? Can we have a life and access to the rights that supposedly our Constitution says every human being has, or every citizen has? Let's be clear on what
well, as we deem ourselves to be intelligent, all of us of all races, colors, and creeds in America, men and women, as we deem ourselves to be intelligent, let's do the most intelligent thing. Let's observe the problem, what the problem is, and let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the white supremacy in America. Are we not there yet? Are we not that advanced as a society yet in America? Because of, you have white parents who want to maintain these white privileges for their white children. Everybody can't exist evenly and equally, So it's real dinosaur, it's real archaic, and as we switch to school systems being online and
the whole
virtual,
the information age, just and the access to information. I mean, to the point that to where it is now, you would hope that would be the case. But what did I tell you? They're fighting what is being deemed as mainstream information. They're fighting that because they don't want the children to have access to it. Because if the children have access to this, it will shift how the politics plays out will shift, and you see it on both ends of the spectrum. Meaning, we've seen traditionally how Black and Brown children in our current structure fighting to maintain a sense of identity while assimilating at the same time, right? And when I say assimilating, that's how you have to be successful. You're not going to be successful within the system by bucking the system, point blank. You're going to constantly be deemed an outlaw, a revolutionary, a rebel. Revolutionary is probably a too PC and positive a term, more of a rebel and an outlaw when you buck the system. But if you can figure out a way to navigate the system, and which is why you see so many times these children that are able to do it so intellectually sound, but then there are still breaks and areas of faulting because we don't have the full knowledge. Our children think that we're making progress now, not knowing the level of the history of where we came from, thinking that the progress, or deeming the start of our progress from slavery. And so, oh yes, of course we made progress if you use that as the starting point. Or even use right before slavery, like you said, what's the story? The narrative is told that they were, the Black folks were taken from huts and
were illiterate
in the forest, in the jungles, and brought over, civilized, colonized, and
doing civilized during slavery.
During slavery,
you see what kind of I mean, you can laugh at it, but this is what we're taught. But you see what happens when you're not in control of the story. We was robbed from our homes, raped, beat, and all this other stuff like that. But it was good because, we were civilized through slavery.
And to the point that you were just saying with the information age and access to information, what I was trying to get at is the fact that we still are going to be dealing with similar issues because the information age also includes a flood of misinformation, a flood of that, and a flood of and still elements where you see those who control the information highways limiting access to the alternative narratives, if you will. The same way, it makes me think of how they burned the libraries of Alexandria. They burned these libraries.
Well, when I started studying all this stuff, they didn't really have the internet, I guess, like that. It wasn't as prevalent.
So you had to
we had books.
But you can even see how you had access to books, and back then, a lot of these books, they weren't even hip to taking some. They put the information in the books because one, they assumed folks weren't reading, and two, the people who were reading obviously weren't thinking critically, because how can you say civilization or any type of theory of thought starts with the Greeks when you're studying the books of the Greeks? They're saying they're going to Africa. They're telling you
that's just really sad. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that at all. That's sad. That's really sad. And we will always rise. People will always rise to greatness. You understand?
Absolutely.
But that's kind of pathetic and sad. We're still in that era where information is being destroyed and couched and altered to make one group look better than the other group. To make Black people look like they never had nothing, no civilizations, no intellect, nothing. That's what's going on. People realize, okay, we was in slavery. White folks, they colonized human beings and colonized land, but they also colonized information. You understand me? They colonized the information, and if it's not codified in a white university, a white institution, then it's not considered real. So through these white institutions, they do this misinformation and teach people all these lies also,
Which is why you could have someone go to an HBCU and still, because even in terms of higher education, there are standards as to what type of content can be taught, what would be considered an acceptable degree, an acceptable curriculum to confer the level of a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So it doesn't matter the fact that you have gone to what is considered a historically Black college or university, the content we're still dealing with colonized information. You're still dealing with colonized curriculum. And perhaps, in some cases, even the professors themselves dealing with a colonized mind. So
I mean, absolutely. You're dealing with all of that stuff because of, to get to this information, there's no grades. There's no grades. There's no degrees. You have to have kind of thirst for this.
not to get to right, because the grade and degrees are conferred simply for information that is codified in what's mainstream. That's where it's tied to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to have a commitment to want to know more, to understand and learn more and dig deeper than what is simply being presented as this is what you need to pass the grade. This is what you need to pass third grade, to pass high school, to pass college. This is what you need. And once you do that, you can go get your job, or you can do.
But everybody has the right for their information to be just made as prevalent as anybody else's,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's not what's been the case.
Yeah.
So,
but that's So I mean, this has been long. It's gotten long. We can talk all day because we do talk all day. But
yeah, I think the point was hopping on the fact that today being
the 50-year anniversary of the official declaration of the war on drugs. So if it's over, how are we going to deal with these war crimes that we suffered? War crimes against children. You had things done in the name of the war on drugs that's not even allowed in war zones in other countries. So you turned America into a war zone. And what are we going to do what are we going to do about that? You understand? What types of subsidies? You're talking about reparations. We need wartime aid. We need hearings on these war crimes.
Oh, okay.
We need hearings on these war crimes. We need to identify the participants of these war on both sides. We need healings. We need vigils. We need stories being told about this war and how public servants are no longer going to attack Black and brown people. If that's what we're talking about, at the end of the war. Because the poor public servants was the arm of that. That's why you can put a knee on a Black person's neck and sit there and let him die. That's why you shoot a Black man in the back because he didn't have a license, because he ain't paid child support. There's so many reasons why over the years, every day why Black people deserve to die, unarmed Black folks, by police. We need to stop that if we're talking about an end to this war on drugs. So as we observe this 50-year war, and as intelligent Americans, I hope we can move on to a more intelligible solution to healing, to stopping, to obliterating this war, obliterating the notion of white supremacy, somebody better than anybody else. And that's what's taught subconsciously through the industries, all of them, down to the school systems. So we signing out. Last words, my love.
Check out Canvas Equity Minutes with Cynthia Monpoint tomorrow evening.
Canvas.
I didn't go into the commission's meeting, which was today. One, because we have been on for over an hour and a half.
And I might pop into that tomorrow. Cannabis Equity Minutes tomorrow. Depends. We'll see.
It depends.
If I'm invited or not. So
yeah. Well, tomorrow, and we'll probably talk about some other things. You started to talk about in light of legalization. I think folks the comment that you talked about with around children, and not being arrested anymore. I think that's a misconception that's out there, and not just in Massachusetts, this is happening in other states as well. When they talk about a win for equity, they talk about the children aspect. So I think may highlight that a little bit more tomorrow evening in our conversation. So, and if you don't come in for the whole entire show, you can come in on the end. But on that note,
love, peace, hair grease.